So we win. Go to Victor Lane. I get out. I said, that was a great run. But right off the bat, first thing I got to do is I got to thank Kyle Busch for driving me dirty, sucking me around so I could come in and get fuel and make it to the end of the race. He saw the interview, come flying into Victor Lane. I didn't drive you dirty. You know I know you did. You knew what you were doing. You're driving like that because you know I'm kicking your ass. Oh, God, it was funny. Hi, I'm Todd Bodine, and this is the Derek Pernesiglio Show.
Can I drive you?
I had these two pictures forever that were my parents. It was when our racetrack was dirt, and then they paved it. And I had them sitting in the attic forever. And that's 2 Christmases ago, for a Christmas present, my wife took those pictures, had them framed, and then that Sherman Speedway advertisement, that was the very first race. She called Watkins Glen Museum. They had it archived. They sent it to her, and that's a picture of my dad giving out the first trophy.
Wow, look at that. Who was the winner?
Cale Lane.
Wow, look at that. Look at that car. Now, that was modified, or was that what they called the cut downs?
No, bugs. They called them bugs.
Okay. That is cool as hell. Holy cow.
So I would love to give you that and have you put it on the poster.
Absolutely. Yeah, we would definitely blend that in. Hell yeah. Dude, thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
We've been wanting to get you for a while. It's huge for us, to have a 2-time Truck Series champion on the show.
So I got lucky twice. What can I say?
Oh man, you were definitely one of those guys to beat in the Truck Series.
Yeah, we had it going on back then. Germain Racing.
Now you ran what'd you do? 6 races last year to complete 800 starts, right?
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. Well,
yeah, there's a lot of guys that have more starts. But that was just a nice milestone to get to. And I mean, there's only, I think it was 28 of us now have more than 800 or more.
Oh, wow.
So it's still a pretty small group.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you ran those races last year, what is some of the differences that you noticed with the racing with a lot of the newer batch of drivers that are out there? Because when you ran, you had like Hornadays and Setzers and Skinners in the field. You had veterans, right. And now, 90% of the field is comprised of kids. I mean, there's only 1 or 2 veterans in the field. You got Craftsman and who else?
Craftsman's the oldest, and then Ben.
Okay.
And Enfinger.
And it's so funny to think of Ben
They're like
Rhodes.
the 3 oldest guys.
I know, it's so funny to think of Ben Rhodes as one of the older guys in the field.
Well, it's his 8th full season.
I know.
He's a veteran.
I know, and I remember when he
even
was a
though
kid,
he's only, I think he's 28.
I know. It's crazy. And I remember when he was a kid running legend cars and,
How about it?
It's great. It's great to see. It really is. But
yeah, so the difference between back then and back in the day and now, first thing everybody asks is, how different are the trucks? Really not a lot of difference. Mm-hmm. That's the one thing good. NASCAR's done a great job of trying to keep rules from changing in the truck series, so things have stayed the same. Little aerodynamic differences, but not much. They got more side force, a little more down force. Mm-hmm. The motors are the biggest difference. Not as much horsepower, but they drove the same in that you try to lift off the throttle as little as possible at these 1.5 miles, so you keep the momentum. But like you said, the big thing is the racing itself, because these kids don't know any better. Wide open, run into you, run through you, it doesn't matter. That's how they race. We didn't do that back in the day with Hornaday and Skinner and
make the pass. Mm-hmm. You didn't earn the spot.
And the other thing that doesn't get mentioned a lot is these kids don't have a lot of experience, right? So when you have that lack of experience, you make a lot of mistakes. And I would say 50% of the crap that we see happen is mistakes. Truly is just stupidity and not knowing any better on their parts. And like Carson Hocevar running into Corey Haim at Phoenix. Carson didn't mean to do it. I mean, he felt horrible afterward. But he makes those mistakes a lot. I mean, Corey drove in the corner deep. I've talked to him about this. He drove it in deep knowing that Clown was behind him. And Carson drove it in deeper yet. You watched the video, he drove it in deeper yet. It wasn't going to turn.
Right.
And he run right into him. It's just a mental error in Carson's part. And it's a mistake that these guys make over and over.
Yeah, but do you think that these are the mistakes that they should be making in the street stocks and late models and all of that at that level?
Absolutely. And unfortunately, that is the state of our sport right now, where trucks have become the entry level to the next level. And that's what it should be. But when you get the trucks, your racecraft should already be honed. Are you going to make mistakes? Certainly. You know, kids aren't mature enough to not make mistakes. And that's part of what I kind of explained. That's their maturity level is just not there. But they should have already known, running short tracks, how to not make those kind of mistakes.
What, excuse me, what is it nowadays about the big rush to put kids in the top level of racing?
I don't understand it, Derek. I don't understand it. So in today's world, well, in the old world, with the old cars, the old Cup cars, even going back before the next gen cars and all that stuff, it was a natural progression to go from trucks to Xfinity Cup, because every jump was a little harder, and the Xfinity car was a little different than a truck. Still had basically the same horsepower, but the bodies were different. Aerodynamics were a little different. Races were a little longer. So you learned your racecraft in trucks. You changed it, perfected it a little better to go to Xfinity, where you have the longer races and you have to think more. You don't go balls to the wall from the green flag. So you learn it better. And the ones that were good enough and figured it out and got good at it, they went to the next level. They went to that Cup Series and they made it to the big time. Well, now with these Cup cars, the way they are, being an Xfinity car does you no good. The only thing it's going to be good for is learning how to run a longer race. And I think these owners figure, put them in a Cup car and let them figure it out there. But to learn how to drive an Xfinity car does no good to get to the Cup Series. So it's kind of like just skipping it now.
Have you driven one of the newer Cup cars to feel what they're like or anything? What are some of the drivers told you what they feel like?
They're hard to drive. They're not like the old cars. And the biggest reason, two big reasons they're not like the old cars is three. The tires are totally different. It's a lower profile, wider tire. So it gives you a totally different feel. The taller profile tires, they have a lot of sidewall give, so they kind of mushy, move around a little bit. These tires, there's no real short sidewall, so when you break traction or when you start to get sideways, the sidewall doesn't give and give you a warning about breaking traction, whether it's the front or the rear. So that's one of the big things. The steering in the new Cup cars are rack and pinion. They say that it feels totally different. I can't see it myself, but that's what they say. And the independent rear suspension is just a totally different animal. So to me, it's still four tires, a motor, and a steering wheel, and you got to go out and do it. And that's why they say it's so much different than Xfinity. From trucks to Xfinity doesn't make it any better to get the Cup.
The funny thing is too is looking at like your stats over the years, like you actually had a longer tenure in the Busch series than you actually had in trucks, but you had a bigger career in the truck series. When you started in the Xfinity series, what I saw was 1986.
Well, that was 2 races.
Okay.
It was actually only 1 race. So I'd moved south from up north, and I went to work. I worked first for Rick Hendrick on the Busch cars, which Xfinity cars.
The Levi Garrett cars?
Garrett cars.
The ones your brother drove?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, when I first moved down, Tim Richmond was driving and my brother Brett. And Jeff drove some, but it was basically those 2. Well, I quit there and I went to work for Tom Pistone, Tiger Tom.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to know his son, Pete. Pete had an old car in his garage. I said, Pete, what are you doing with this car? He said, nothing. I said, can I fix it up? He said, yeah, fix it up. We'll race it. We'll go race it. Cool. So Jeff was still driving for Rick Hendrick. Rick gave me a motor to put in, a 311 B&R motor, like the Mac Daddy badass motor that you can get, and went to Rockingham. Now, at this point, I had like 30 starts in my whole career.
Before that? In what before that?
In SK Modifieds in the New England area.
Okay.
And I raced a little bit of late model stock car here. So nothing on a big track, and it was all 30 lap features, except for the stock cars were like 100 laps. So I didn't have a lot of experience. We go to Rockingham, we'll get this thing done, work my tail off on it every night for months. Go to Rockingham, and I had my brother Jeff take the car out first, because I'd never done anything like this. I said, just take it out and make sure it's good. He goes out and runs this thing. He's 3rd on the board. He's like, this car's really fast. This thing's good. He said, just a little tight, but just keep it there because you never did this before. I said, yeah, okay. So I go out. Now, I've been at Rockingham 100 times. Well, not 100, probably 15 times as a crew member before I raced. So I watched drivers, and I watched what they were doing. So I knew the lines. I knew what to do. I just had to figure out how to do it. I went out, and 3rd lap on a track, I come off of turn 2, and it jumped sideways, and I spun to the inside and hit the inside wall. So I never got to race Rockingham. So we take it home. Rick said, look, just keep the motor, and whenever you're going to run, we'll run it. Got it back together, went to Martinsville, and we qualified like 28th and ended up dropping out because the motor overheated. But that was 1986. Wow. So that was my one start. My next Busch start was 1990.
Right, I remember it was like a while later.
Yeah.
Now, what happened between those years? Were you just working on cars?
Yeah, working on them, building them, crew chiefing them. My big break came going to work for Highline Racing, which was Felix Sabates' first team, and his partners were Bobby Hillen and Ted Conder. And Bobby was Martinsville, ironically, again, and I was working for Billy Standridge. I built him a brand new car, and we went to Martinsville to race it. And Bobby they were starting this race team. So Bobby came over to the Busch side and was looking at the cars, and he didn't have a clue who I was. He come up and he said, man, this is a nice car. Who built this? I built it. Man, this thing's beautiful. Starting a team, you know. And we talked a little bit, and he left. Well, he left and literally went right back to the Cup side and started talking to my brother Brett. No clue that he was just talking to me. And Bobby's telling Brett, yeah, we're getting ready to start this Busch team, and I need to get some good people. Brett says, we got to go talk to my brother. He's over there. He just built this car over there, the pink one, because it was a magenta car, you know.
Okay.
Bobby says, you're kidding me. I was just over there looking at that thing. This thing's beautiful. Brett said, yeah, he's a good fabricator. So Bobby turned right around, come back over, come up in the back of the hauler, says, are you Todd? And that's how it started. So I got my break. Bobby hired me. And
to drive?
To be a fabricator.
To be a fabricator? Okay.
And we built Highline Racing.
Okay.
Bobby drove the first 2 years, and they let me build a sportsman car. You remember the old Sportsman series at Charlotte? Let me build a sportsman car in the shop. I ran 4 races at Charlotte and finished second 3 times. Never won. Always close races and right there.
Right. That was that series that Humpy started, right? Where
Yeah.
a lot of the late model guys got old Cup cars and they come and run. And
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And my car was one of Jeff's old Levi Garrett cars that Waddell Wilson gave me, the chassis. and Brett was driving for Bud Moore at the time.
Look at these names you're putting out there. I mean, these are legends, man.
And Bobby was driving for the Stabola Brothers right next door to our shop. And all these people gave me parts and pieces to put this car together. So when I got the car all together, I had like $7,000 in it. And that was it. Jeff bought the motor for it. So fast forward. So I finished second 3 times. And now, I think it was 1990. Bobby had to quit racing, and he sold his part to Felix and Ted. Kyle Petty came to drive because Kyle was driving Felix's Cup car.
Okay.
So Kyle came to drive the car, and we were sponsored by Ames. We were going to run like 15 or 16 races. And Ames came to him and said, look, we want to run 8 more races. Kyle's like, I don't want to run 8 races. Now, we're standing at the shop just BSing about this when they tell him.
Right.
So, you got to know Kyle. Oh, man, I don't want to run no more races. Said, let Todd drive the thing. He needs to. I don't want to do anymore. And I'm like, oh, hell yeah. Put me in. So Ames was a northern company. I'm a northern boy. And they liked the fit. So I ended up, I think I ran 8 races that year. And did pretty good. Martinsville was our first race. We qualified like 13th. I was running 5th on restart with 8 to go. I missed a shift. Ended up finishing 8th. Did pretty good. Next race was Dover. Now, I'd never been on a big track. My first time there. Now, I'd been there many times as a crew member.
Before this, you had run Charlotte, though, right? With those sportsmen?
With the sportsman car. Well, that's true.
You
but
had
that's
some big track
4 races.
Right?
I kind of understood. It was so you got a good point. So I ran a few races, but now first time at Dover, which is totally different than Charlotte. But now I've been there several times as a crew member, crew chief, and so I knew how the lines were. I knew where to let off. I knew how to do everything but hold the wheel. And went out, qualified 4th, and finished 3rd. Nice. My first speedway race.
Nice.
Harry
this
Gant
was before Dover was concrete and all of that.
Right,
Yeah,
it's pavement.
You still had to slide the car around.
Harry Gant won. Rick Mast was 2nd, and I was 3rd. And we crossed the start-finish line in a line. That was that. We'd go in the corner. Harry'd go way up, and Rick would go in the middle, and I'd try to stay at the bottom. You know, we're all trying different things.
Right.
Ended up finishing 3rd. That got Frank Cece and Scott Welliver's attention. Frank and Scott are from my hometown in New York. At the time, Jack Sprague was driving for him. Jimmy Spencer drove for him for a long time.
Yeah, they owned modifieds for years, too.
Frank owned a modified, yeah. Mm-hmm. So that winter, they were going to hire a driver that had a sponsor. I won't mention the name. And they flew to Charlotte to meet with the guy. Never met him before. And they show up. The guy's got long hair, and he's out there. He's on a different planet.
The sponsor?
The driver.
The driver. Oh, okay.
And they leave this meeting early. They told the guy, "Oh, we got to catch a flight, but guys, we'll get back to you," because the guy had his own sponsor. Well, they left the meeting out in the parking lot. I said, "We ain't hiring this guy." Well, they had 4 hours until their flight. Scott says to Frank, "What are we gonna do?" He said, "Let's call Bodine up. Let's call Todd up and see just talk to him." Mm-hmm. Scott was actually my brother Jeff's roommate in college, so there was a connection there.
Really?
They were both from Elmira. I was born in Elmira, raised in Chemung, down the street. We had that connection. So they called me, and I happened to be at home. Back then, we didn't have cell phones. Met him at a steakhouse over by the airport. We sat there and talked and left there, and they hired me as their driver.
Really? That's awesome.
That was my big break.
So who was the guy who didn't get the ride? Was it somebody who's well known today? Or?
No. It was a dirt driver. I can't actually remember his name.
Was it Jan Opperman?
No. It was one of. It wasn't Scott Bloomquist, but it was like a Scott Bloomquist.
Oh,
he was a dirt late model guy, long hair. They said he was just out there. Yeah. So I went to work for him in '90 in that winter. In '91, I hired Clyde McLeod, who was my brother Brett's crew chief on his modified.
Clyde's awesome.
Yeah.
I remember
John Monson, who was one of my oldest friends. He came to work for us. John Fabian, who I brought down from Pennsylvania. I mean, we went to work at Herb Nab's shop building, and it was a 3-car garage with a little paint booth in one of them. And we built our race cars and raced out of there, and we ended up winning our, it was like our 8th or 10th race out, which was Dover.
with
that car, with that team. That was the first
as
win.
CC Welliver Racing, right? That is cool, man.
Yeah, that was my break,
and
that's
they were
how I got
around for
started.
a long time too in the Busch Series.
Well, we went from that one car team out of that garage to 3 teams in a 100,000 square foot building, racing with fully funded race teams. That's what we ended up when I left.
Because they also had McLaughlin driving for them too.
Mike took
Jimmy
over.
Spencer,
Mike
right?
took over for me when I left the team.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, wow. Just now, you know what the funny thing is though, like all of that story that you just told me. There's no way you would hear of a young kid doing that today, working on their own stuff. And you know, I mean, there are kids that do work on their stuff, which I have a ton of respect for.
I'm going to blow your mind for you.
Okay.
All right. Today, you want the guys 18, 19, 16. Some guys are in trucks are 16. They just can't run speedways. And the next year, they're running full time at 17, 18. I didn't start driving full time as a professional race car driver till I was 27 years old.
Right, which is considered elderly by today's standards. Yeah, like 27.
Isn't that crazy?
Aren't looking at you.
No.
It's unbelievable. That was going to be the other thing that I was going to say. Like, you've been around for different generations of racing where you worked on your stuff to get a ride. Other guys would bring money to the deal. And then now, you know, to racing with this younger generation. How do you keep that longevity along those years to be able to really kind of metamorphosize or change with the sport as it changes?
I don't know. I just got lucky. I was in the generation where if you got your opportunities and you got hired because of your talent.
Mm-hmm.
I was in that generation in that time frame, and today it's not so much. The first question they ask is, well, how much money you got?
Yeah. And
then they worry about whether you can drive or not. But I just got lucky. I really did. I mean, I had good people. I made a lot of mistakes along the way. I should have had a bigger career. I should have been a cup guy better. I should have done things differently. But at the same time, man, I had a great career.
Like what, though? What do you think you should have done
Well,
different?
I had a couple opportunities with some of the bigger cup teams. Sometimes it didn't line up with my contract, and I couldn't, those kinds of things. One time I just flat turned them down, and I don't want to say who it was, but it was the big teams. And if I thought with my heart instead of my head.
Mm-hmm.
And, when I was driving for Butch Mock, I had 3 offers from cup teams, big teams. And I promised Butch that I would stay with him and build a winning cup team together.
So you remain loyal.
I remained loyal.
You know what, though? But that's respectable.
Well, and then after the second year, Butch fired me. Yeah. So, should I have done things different? Yeah. But I could go to sleep at night knowing I did the right thing.
Right. No, I get what you mean. There's a lot of times where being loyal, it had hurt me in the past too. But that longevity, though, that you are talking about, you've managed to kind of do it along the ways in the broadcasting and then also doing, NASCAR Race Hub and the Truck Series stuff. So do you still get enjoyment and fun out of doing that?
When professional athletes get done in their career, 99% of the time they're standing there like, okay, now what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
Right? They all don't go into broadcast and they all don't have businesses. They just stand there, well, what do I do? Right? I got so lucky at the end of my career. In the middle of 13, I was driving for ThorSport and it just wasn't working. And we're not running well, and Duke was spending his own money, and I said, look, Duke, let's just stop. You don't need to waste your money. I've won races. I've had a great career. I'm good. We don't need to go out here and look like fools every week.
Mm-hmm.
He agreed. So we stopped racing in the middle of the season. 2 weeks later, Dan Schutte called me up. He was a producer at the time with the Truck Series, or working with the Truck Series. And said, hey, look, Michael's going to Goodwood, and he's going to miss the Iowa race. Would you want to come and do the booth for Iowa? Be you, Phil, and I forget who was anchor at the time.
Phil, and probably it was the Fox Sports one day.
It might have been
Rick Allen.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was Rick. That's right. I don't know why I couldn't remember that. But Rick, Phil, and I went up in the booth for Iowa. First time I ever did anything like this. And I wasn't the best. I kind of shy a little bit, but I did okay. And they said, look, we got some more races we need to fill in. So I think the first year I did 3, the next year I did 5, but I also started doing, they said, look, how would you like to do the pre-race show with Daniel Trotta? Yeah, that'd be cool.
Okay.
That's where it started. I've been working for him ever since. So I just got lucky and fell into another career that I'm really enjoying. I have fun every week. Kind of got a little niche here with doing the pre-race show, race day show with Caitlin, and we've had a lot of other guys. Now it's with Trevor and myself. Got that little niche and enjoy doing it every week. And we got a hub segment every week for 6 to 10 minutes. It's a lot of fun. I got a neat little spot I'm in.
And you don't have to do all the hustle and bustle and the traveling and jumping from airplane to airplane.
Yeah, that was at first. That was like, oh, thank God. Process. Same exact thing. It's like, oh, thank God, this is good. We get to stay home. A little while, you're like, oh man, I gotta go to racetrack. Right. It sucks, and then you kind of fall into it. So,
I got you.
But I'm loving it.
Have you fallen into any short track racing around the area or done anything like that? I mean, because Bobby Labonte's running the Smart Modified Tour. That would be something fun for you to do every once in a while.
Well, I tell you what, I'd really like to do is some road racing in the Trans Am series.
Okay.
Yeah, I love road racing. There's not many race car drivers that don't, because it's just so much fun. But I did some racing with SVRA, Stock Car Vintage Racing Association. Tony Perella runs it, and he also has the Trans Am series, and they do everything on the same weekends together. So right before COVID, he was doing what's called VROC, Vintage Race of Champions, and he have 10, 12 vintage guys, and some of them weren't even retired. And I won't say retired, but some of them weren't retired. But we had it was a 4-race series, and you didn't have to do all the races. One year I did 1, and the next year I did 2, and then COVID, and they couldn't do it anymore. But we were having a ball. We were racing in like 68 to 72 vets.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was 45-minute race, and it was like a pro-am. So the guy that owned the car raced. I think it ended up they had to race like 4 minutes at least out of a 45-minute race, and then you switch drivers and you finish the race. And man, we had so much fun.
Which tracks did you run at? Like Road
Atlanta. Well, Road Atlanta was one, but Coda. They've been to Coda with them. But the races that I ran 2 at VIR and 1 at Indy on the road course.
Okay.
Yeah. So I finished podium the first 2, and the last one at VIR I ended up winning it.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Awesome. VIR is a cool track, man.
It's awesome racetrack.
It really is. Yeah, I was there actually before the oak tree fell. I don't know if you ever saw that.
That was up when they told me it fell.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was
what
there.
A shame.
What a shame, but what a cool track.
Yeah.
I called Playboy Mazda MX-5 Cup races there that ended in 3 wide finishes. A bunch of K&N races, ARCA. Actually, I interviewed Austin Cindric for his very first NASCAR win when he had it there. Yeah, over the years. Actually, let's go back a little bit to the beginnings. When I had your brother on the show, one of the first things that he opened up talking about was working at Chemung Speedrome. Now, did you work at the track too as a kid, like he did?
No, I was younger.
Okay.
Yeah. So, we we grew up at the racetrack. That's what we did. You know, I had my first 7 birthdays at the infield of Daytona 500 because when you're a racing family, where you go on vacation, you go to February Daytona and watch the race.
Speed weeks.
My birthday's in February, so but I grew up at the racetrack.
Okay.
And for my first 11 years, I could have cared less about the racing. I didn't want nothing. I've raiding the concession stand and the candy stand with my buddies, and we're just running around. I never even watched the races. Could have cared less. And when I was 11, Brett had started racing street stocks, and
he was. You're 11. He's how old?
16.
Okay, all right.
And him and his buddies would be out in the shop working on the car, and I'd go out and just hang out, and because I want to hang out with the big guys, right, big boys. And I'd wipe the car down and push the broom and just kind of hanging out. Well, he asked me one week, "You want to go to the race?" Okay, I'll go. You know, it was Perry, New York. First time he'd ever went there to race. And I wasn't old enough to get in, so they snuck me in the back of the hauler. And I kind of stayed around the car the whole time. I was nervous, you know, the little kid didn't know. Well, he never raced there before, and he went out and won the race that night. So now the race is over, so who cares? I'm going out to victory lane. This is cool, you know, and we're out there, and the trophy girls and the stands are yelling and screaming and having fun. The trophy, I was like, this is pretty darn cool right here. Now I understand why these guys work on this race car every night.
Right.
This is really cool. And that's when the whole thing changed for me. And I said, I want to be a part of this. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of hung out in the shop and helped a little bit and went to a couple more races that year. And we ended up moving to New England when I was 13. Dad had sold a racetrack. We went out there. Jeff was racing modifieds there. Brett had
turn the mic a little towards your breath.
There we go.
There you go.
And Brett had gone off to college. He was still racing street stocks. Actually started running some modifieds for Wayne Miller,
right,
who was LW's dad,
yeah.
Who Wayne just passed recently. But so we're out there, and I become friends with Rick Armstrong, who is the son of Dick Armstrong, who owned Jeff's cars.
Right.
Well, Ricky was older, and he started racing a late model at Stafford. So I was just going to school, and Ricky really didn't care about working on the cars. Yeah, he's too much having fun, which I had a lot of fun with him. We were buddies, don't get me wrong. But Hoppy Harrington, who Hop was one of the old-time racers in New England, won a bunch of races.
We know him from NEMA because he raced with the midgets in NEMA for years.
Now Hoppy retired at this point, and he was older. Heck, he was probably 63. Older. Heck, I'm almost 60.
Are you really?
Yeah, 59.
You look great, man.
59.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just turned 49 last week.
Oh, you got a long way to go. You're a young pup. But Hop would come pick me up when I got out of school. The shop was only 3 miles from where I lived and from where the school was. We lived right by the school. He'd come pick me up after school and take me to the race shop so I could work on the race car.
Okay.
So that was my first working as a mechanic, as a fabricator on a race car. So Hoppy taught me how to do a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And at the time, Jeff was there racing. So I kind of became the fabricator, the cleaner, the parts guy, I was kind of the crew chief on this thing.
The everything guy.
The late model, yeah. And ended up, Ricky started racing, and we did pretty good. Ended up winning a race, and I was officially the crew chief at the time. So I was like, this is cool,
In the late models.
In the late models.
Okay, and really, the late models at Stafford were pretty heavy,
very
too, man. You had guys
yeah.
like, who was it, Jim McCallum and Paul Richardson, right?
I'll throw another name out there. The car that we bought that end of that season before we started racing was a Nova that Mike Stefanik had raced the year before.
Wow, no kidding. Was that a car that Mike built?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think him and his brother built it. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, look at how that path goes for you, because as a young kid, you're learning what it takes to put the car on the track. Mm-hmm. A lot of these kids nowadays, they don't understand.
No
that.
clue.
I know.
No clue.
So you went from Chemung to live in New England?
Yeah, just outside of Boston, in Bellingham.
Okay. Now, was it just to live, or was it to go racing?
Well, my mom and dad went to work for Dick Armstrong, the guy that owned Jeff's car, owned all the race cars. He had a jewelry factory, and they went to work at the jewelry factory. So we moved out there because Jeff was there racing, so we went racing with him, and they worked there. And
I thought they had owned the racetrack for all those years.
No, they had sold it. Dad sold it in 77.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because our first year out there was 78.
Okay.
And Jeff won 55 races out of 78 starts that year.
Yeah, he made some like world record or something.
Guinness
like
Book
that.
of World Records.
Yeah.
Highest winning percentage.
For modifieds.
For racing.
Okay.
Period.
That's unbelievable. So in those years, is that when you hopped in the SK?
No. So we moved from there. Now, in the meantime, Jeff moved to North Carolina to start racing down here for Emmanuel Savrakis.
And that's like 80, what, 3, 4?
1980.
Okay.
And we moved down to Virginia. Okay, so now Satch Worley, another racer, modified racer in the South, him and his dad were building a racetrack. They hired my dad to come help build the racetrack and help promote it, because Dad did it for 25 years. I mean, what better than that kind of experience, right?
Right.
So we moved to Virginia, just north of Martinsville. I ended up graduating high school there. I didn't do any racing. I went raced with Jeff a little bit in a Sportsman series, which is now Xfinity, around the South. He was driving for Emmanuel Savrakis.
The white 99 cars, right?
White Tornado.
Okay.
Yeah. South Boston, Orange County, South Side, Langley.
Right.
I mean, Old Dominion, all of them.
Right.
And I graduated high school there and immediately moved back to Connecticut, where now Brett was racing modifieds full-time for Sherry Cup. I went to work in the paper cup factory, and after I get out of work, I worked there from 6 to 4 every day in the maintenance department. And after I get out of work, I'd go work on the race car every night. Well, that
Until
first
what, like midnight?
Well, it wasn't that bad because Brett was there working all day, so he'd give me some task and I'd work a little bit and go home. Right. Well, but that Thanksgiving, I don't know how detailed you want me to get into all this.
Go tell us stories, man. That's what drives the show.
So that Thanksgiving, Brett was friends with Dick Traynor. Dick owned a trucking company and also raced modifieds.
That beautiful number 5 car.
Exactly.
Yep, I remember it.
So when he bought that first beautiful number 5, it was that time frame. We went over to his house for Thanksgiving. Just me, Brett, and his wife Diane, and we're sitting around BSing before dinner. And I see this race car, sitting out back, an old Pinto. I just didn't say nothing. So we sit down and eating dinner. I said, Dick, what's that old car out there? He said, that's just one of my old cars. It's just a junker we got sitting out there. Okay. So after dinner's done, I said, Dick, I'm going to go look at that car. All right, go ahead. So I go out and I look at the car, and it's complete. I mean, less motor, but it had gauges. It had the rear end. It had everything to make a race car. And sitting right next to it was this bare frame. So I go back in. I said, Dick, what are you going to do with that car? He said, nothing. I said, can I buy it from you? Here I am, a kid. I make $400 a week in a paper cup factory. What am I going to do, right? Got no shop. I got nothing. He said, no, but I'll give it to you. I said, holy cow, are you kidding me?
That's cool.
I said, can I have the frame too? He said, yeah, take them both. So I get the frame. Brett's owner gave me a corner of the race shop to build a race car. So I had this race car, and I was putting everything I had into it. I didn't have to put a lot into it because it had most of the parts. I had to buy brakes, I think, and brake lines and odds and ends.
It was what? It was just a lot of cleaning and restoring everything?
No, I took everything off of the old car and built that new frame as a new race car.
Ah, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. And I had two friends, Andy Cutts and Bill Goldflat. They bought the motor, and here we go. We go racing at Stafford. My first experience driving a race car.
In SKs?
In SKs.
And what year was this?
That was 83.
No kidding. Wow.
And
so you were before the Ted Christopher era at Stafford.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Well, no, Teddy started in SKs the same time I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would you guys both compete for Rookie of the Year at Stafford?
Let me go further now. So the first week we go up, and we can't race because the steering's messed up. I had to fix it. So we go up the second week and we race. My first race, it's funny, missed qualifying in the heat race by 1 spot. So I started on this outside pole in the Consi. Top 2 made it. I finished second. So I'm starting last in the feature. 28th in a 25-lap feature. SK Modifieds. Ended up finishing 7th.
Nice.
But I never passed a car.
Because they were killing each other.
They're all just wrecking out of the way. I'm just driving. I have no clue what I'm doing.
At least you're getting good practice avoiding shit, you know.
So the next week, now Jeff and Brett were in the South at this point. Brett had moved south, and because he was only running a modified part-time at this point. And Jeff came up. Actually, no, I think Brett was still full-time. But Jeff had come up for a Wednesday night show, and we did a match race. Just the 3 of us on the track. Big promotion Stafford did for a Wednesday night race.
You, Brett, and Jeff.
Me, Brett, and Jeff.
That's cool.
So we go out to practice a little. Brett, I forget what car Jeff was driving. Brett was driving the coupe. I remember the 83 coupe. That was a famous car up there.
Yes, the white car. Yes.
Yeah. Well, it was blue and it was all different colors. But anyway, well, we're out practicing. My motor blows up in my car. So now I have to run. The Pryor brothers brought their car up as the backup spare if something happened. And so I had to drive their car. I never go out for the race. I didn't practice it or nothing. So we go out there and we're racing and we're right together. And pretty soon Jeff and Brett get goofing around. They'd pulled away. I caught them. I figured out how to drive a little bit, caught them. And unbeknownst to me, they'd gotten together and said, look, we'll let Todd get out front, race a little bit and lead, and then we'll go out and pass them and we'll race for the lead. Mm-hmm. They let me get out front and they couldn't catch me. They couldn't pass me.
Right.
I ended up winning the race. It's like, this is pretty cool. And they both said, they'll admit it, they couldn't pass me. They were trying to catch me. I got better with the car handled good. So that was my first time. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That was that Challenge of Champions they did, right? Where Earnhardt would come up and run a late model, and some would Tim Richmond and Bouchard, right? They did stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. The Bouchard brothers were there too. They had their own thing going on though.
Okay.
Yeah. So actually it was a Friday night race, which is a whole nother story about a dump truck motor that we put in my car to race Seekonk that next Saturday.
Oh God. So you run Seekonk.
Well, we raced Seekonk for 13 weeks.
Okay.
The best time I ever had racing.
Seekonk, yeah, it's a fun track.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of side-by-side action at Seekonk.
But the fun part was a bunch of us kids, right? I ran the same set of tires for 13 weeks. The money that we made, we'd finish between 4th and 7th every week. And the money that we made, it paid to maintenance the race car, paid to get the tow truck, to get the car to the racetrack, paid for everybody on my crew, which was like 5 guys. I paid for them all to get in, and it bought all the beer for after the race every week.
Wow,
that's how we raced for 13 weeks.
I hate to say it this way, but do you think we need to get back to that? I mean, I know it's harder than ever to do that because of the way the racing is.
Even in short track today, the money is so big, the cost so much to build a car and to race. Some people kind of have that fun, but most people aren't.
Right. How many years did you run the SK at Stafford?
Well, I ran only a couple races at Stafford before the motor blew up. Then we raced Seekonk. Okay. The next year, I tried to race in the beginning of the year, and I had no money. I couldn't afford to do it.
It wasn't another dump truck laying around?
No.
Well, yeah. Tell us the dump truck motor story. How the hell
So we blew the motor at Stafford, and my buddy Mike LaJoy.
Okay, I know Mike. He ran midgets in Nima. Yeah, he ran super modifieds for a little while too.
And his dad was Connie. And Connie owned winning modifieds for George Summers at Seekonk. They won championships, the Gore.
They had a plumbing company.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So Mike calls his dad up and said, Dad, we need a motor for the race car. He said, we have the dump truck that what they do is the plumbing company throw all their trash in it, and once a week they take it to the dump it and bring it back. That's all that dump truck did. And they had just rebuilt the motor in it. Just kind of said, come get the motor. So load the car up off to Massachusetts we go, and we pull in there. In the meantime, Connie had called a guy, Smiley Waterman, was a motor man. Smiley called Nat Chevertone, who owned a motor shop.
Nat's
they
Racing
got
Engines.
they got lifters and a cam and parts and pieces. We pull the motor out of the race car. We push the dump truck under. It's an old barn, and they had the lift coming out the end with the chain fall. Pull the motor out of the dump truck. They pull it apart. They change the cam. We're working all night long. I mean, there's like 6 or 8 of us, working all night.
Right.
Putting this motor together. We get it in the car. We get it started about 1:30 in the afternoon. And it's a little 307. It wasn't built for racing. Started up. Connie rolls underneath, and the front main seal was leaking. Damn it, what are we going to do now? We don't have time to pull the pan down and put seals in. It's kind of, I got this. He's a plumber by trade. So in plumbing, to hold the sink to a counter, they used to have little C-grip clamps. And they just screw it, and it pulls it down and holds it. Kind of goes on there, takes brake clean, sprays it all off, gets all the oil, dries it with an air hose, gets it clean, takes a tube of silicone and just silicones, and he smears it all up around it, and he's just got it covered. He takes about 6 or 8 of those clamps and clamps the oil pan to the block with those clamps. It's right there by the harmonic valve. I just like, this is ridiculous. Let it dry for about 20 minutes. We sat there and let it dry. So, all right, start it up, and the damn thing didn't leak.
That's awesome.
We threw the car on the scales, we scaled it quick, put it on the trailer, and off to Seekonk we went.
Wow, that's great.
And
you had to race with some big names at Seekonk.
Oh, yeah.
George
Eddie
Savory
St. Angelo, Savory. I mean, there was a lot of,
Freddie Estelle or Deke Estelle.
Deke Estelle, yeah.
Deke Estelle, they were tough to race. I announced at Seekonk for years, so I had really grown to have a love for the track. It was one of the tracks that launched my career.
So a quick story there. So now we qualify in the heat race, and now I'm dead tired, right? We're lined up, getting the cars lined up for the feature. I'm tired, so I climb in the car, and I put the seatbelts on. I didn't have my helmet on. Bugsy Stevens comes over. We've known Bugsy forever, and he kneels down beside the car. Well, this is an R-rated show, right? So I can do some explicit.
Yeah, you can say whatever you want.
So everybody watching, Bugsy was crazy. Okay. He said, okay. He kneels down. He's on his knees. And he said, okay, listen, you little son of a bitch. He reaches behind his back, pulls out a 45, cocks it, puts it up to my head.
No shit.
He said, listen, you little son of a bitch, this is what you're going to do. You're going to run half a groove off the wall in the straightaway. You're going to run half a groove off the bottom in the corners. And they're not going to be able to pass you if you do that. And he said, if you don't do what I'm telling you, I got a little something, some lead for you when you come back in this garage area. So I go from being dead tired to be scared to death at this point.
You're white as a ghost.
Yeah. So we go out in the feature and started I think we started 7th or 8th, got up to 3rd, and we had no horsepower, and we're racing against these built 358s, but Seekonk's a circle, so we don't really need a lot of horsepower. So here come the guy with the built motors, the guys in the built motors, Eddie St. Angelo and Savory and those guys. This little at a time, they just passed me. We end up finishing 7th or 8th, first time out. Come in, man, we thought we won the race. So that was our first Seekonk experience. We ended up racing 12 more weeks 10 weeks with the same set of, it's 13 weeks with the same set of tires. The 12th week, the same set of tires. 12th week.
12 races out of a set of tires.
Old McCreary's hard as this table.
It's unheard of.
The only reason I got a new set of tires is Eddie St. Angelo, who was friends with my brother Brett and his wife, came over and said, look, you cannot race on these hockey pucks anymore. He said, I got a set of tires over here. I took off. I didn't care for them. I didn't like them. There's nothing wrong with them. They just didn't suit what we needed. He said, come over here and get them and put them on your car. They only had one practice on them, so they're brand new. I was like, hell yeah, I'll take a brand new set of tires. So that's the only reason I had new tires.
Oh my God. It's just, that's unheard of anymore. I mean, to be able to do those things. And the Bugsy story is fantastic. And that just totally sounds like Bugsy too. Because the last time I chatted with him, we were at a modified tour race at Seekonk. And he's sitting there in his scooter, and he's staring at the car. And I go over and I shake his hand. He looks at the car, the old blue, the one that he used to drive. Yeah. He's pointing to it. He goes, "When I ran these things, they didn't have no rules. Now they've made rules and fucked it all up."
That's Bugsy.
That's Bugsy.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So you moved down here. You made a huge career for yourself in the Busch Series, and then. You ran, God, how many years in Cup? A bunch of years in Cup.
2 full years with Butch Mock, and then back to Xfinity. Ran some Cup stuff in there, substituted for Bill Elliott a few times, and just different things. And then 98 was the Tabasco fiasco.
The Tabasco fiasco.
Yeah, I went to this team, was supposed to be the greatest thing ever, and.
The 35 car, right?
Yeah.
Who was the team owner?
Bob Hancher and Gary Salee.
What was the name of the team again?
Team Tabasco.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
At the time, it was the best sponsor in the sport. Teams were getting $5 million, $4 million to run a full season in Cup, and we had $6 million.
Wow.
But they were dishonest people, and it went south in a hurry. And they fired me halfway through the year. So and then I went back to the Busch Series. Race for CC again. We won races, 4th in a championship. I mean, we had a good time doing that.
Finished second in the championship to Randy.
That was actually before Tabasco. That was 97 with a Stanley car.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
And then ended up Travis Carter hired me. And it's when he had 2 cars. Darrell retired. I took over for Darrell, and Jimmy Spencer was my teammate. And we ran for Kmart to start with.
It was Kmart, and then you had the Discover car.
Discover card, and at the end we had National Guard.
How much higher of a stress was it racing in Cup compared to the other series that you would run in? Because it's obviously a performance-based business, and you had performed in trucks, you performed in the Busch Series. Like, what is the stress level, or what is the emphasis to put on you to perform in that?
Honestly, Derek, to me, it didn't matter. I always put enough pressure on myself to perform, no matter what I was driving. It was, you got to perform, you got to do it right. So for me, it was no more pressure than if I was driving trucks or Xfinity. Now, the difference between the two was I always had more fun with Xfinity and trucks, especially at trucks at Germain. We had a great team. It was like every member was like family members. It truly was.
Right.
You hear teams talk about that, but we really did. We had a family at Germain Racing.
Right. Well, when was the last year anybody had fun in Cup?
It's been a while.
It's such an emphasis on performing. It is. And right when I got with Travis is when Cup really, really changed to a business-driven model instead of having fun and a bunch of guys racing kind of model. You had to make a business out of it to survive, and the ones that were strong survived. And unfortunately for Travis, we got down to the end with Discover Card, and we thought we were good for the next year, which was going to be 04. As Discover Card was all in, and the contracts hadn't been signed yet, but everybody was under the impression we were racing in 04. Well, like 3 races to go in the season, Discover Card comes to us and says, "Look, we can't do it." They were owned by one of the big financial companies. I can't remember which one it was, but that company was upside down. But Discover Card was making money. So they had Discover Card's profit had to go to keep the other side alive. So they couldn't spend any money in our race team. So here we are,
3 weeks before the season is over, got no sponsor for '04.
Right.
And Travis, I mean, he had to let me go. And they tried to run some races the next year, odds and ends, but he just couldn't survive and couldn't come up with a sponsor, and he had to sell his teams.
So, like, is that like a moment or a point where you're kind of realizing that this is going more in the corporate level, in the corporate direction, that I need to change how I am or present myself to a sponsor, or at least keep in the business? You know, that longevity thing, really, in a way.
Yeah. At this point, for me, when it all went down, it was just about finding a job. And at that point, I just got to get a job. So I started '04, and I had no job. I was doing starting parks for Larry Gunzelman in the Cup Series, which we were doing well. We were making money because we would make the races. We'd made all the races. And about halfway through '04, Mike Hillman Sr. called me, which I'd known Mike forever. We had our shops next to each other, and he'd work late, I'd work late. We'd get done, we'd go outside and have a beer together, you know. So I'd known him forever, and he was Brett's crew chief for a while. He calls me up and says, "Look, I got these 3 brothers. They're Toyota dealers out of Columbus, Ohio. We're going to start a Toyota truck team. And then another guy out of Florida is friends with them. We're all going to be in it. I said, I want you to come drive this thing." I said, "Cool. I'd love to do it. I was Toyota backed, Toyota funded. Need you to come down to the shop and such and meet these guys." So Steve Germain tells the story the best. So I go down to the shop. They come down from Ohio. They fly down, all 3 of them. And I walk in the shop to meet these guys for the first time. And they're all in their suits and ties, you know, and being car dealers. I walk in, I got flip-flops on, shorts, and a T-shirt. I got a ball cap. I said, "Hey, how you doing?" Yeah, meet each other. Steve Germain says, "I got a question for you." Right off the bat, he says it, because you got to know Steve. He's no bones about it, right? He said, "I got a question for you. Is this how you come dressed to every interview?" So, like, okay. I said right back at him, so, "Well, I didn't come here for an interview. I came here because I thought I had a job." They all start laughing, and that was hired me that day, and we went on and won 2 championships and 21 races.
Broke the ice. That was it, huh? Yeah. Like, and the relationship that you had with Mike Hillman too, it was like one of them strong driver crew chief combinations like we see with like Ray and Jeff, or you know, Darryl and Jeff, and it was big.
Well, let's clarify now. Mike Hillman Sr. Was the one that started it, and he's hired me. And we went the first year in '04, and we finished 4th at Richmond. We went to California and won. Should have won Vegas the next week. I mean, we were kicking butt from day go. Mike Hillman Jr. came to be the crew chief that winter, and that's when we went on fire. So me and Junior became really close friends. Mike was my best man at my wedding. Right. Junior. Okay. So it was one of those relationships, and we got to the point where I could tell him something. It's loose getting in the corner, and he'd know from the tone of my voice and what I was saying how to fix the truck. I mean, it was that kind of relationship.
Right.
I had full confidence in him. He had full confidence in me, and it was magic.
It's one of those things that you don't see much of anymore. It's very much you're here to do a job, whereas you try to see that chemistry that blends, and it's tough.
But like I said earlier, we were a family. I mean, every guy on the crew, in the shop, we were all family, and it truly was that way. That's cool. they Senior'd have parties at his house or get-togethers at his house, and the whole shop would go. And it wasn't because he invited them all, because they were family and they came to a family function, and that's how we all treated it, and that's how it was from day one. And it was just a different kind of race team to be a part of.
When everyone's pulling in the same direction, it's amazing all the magic that could be created, right?
Everybody had confidence in everybody. You know, the crew members knew that guy was working his tail off. And if he needed help, he went over there to help him. He didn't have to be told. You know, it was everybody was for everybody, one for all and all for one. It was truly the way we lived.
Now, they ended up getting out of racing just because of the cost of it, right? It was harder to find sponsors. And all that,
yeah. Bob, the brothers wanted out, and Bob's kept going with the Cup team for a while with Geico, and he did okay, and they had fun, but it was just got to be too much of a hassle and money and all that, and Bob wanted out and just enjoy life.
Well, now nowadays, what do you see with this younger generation of drivers? I mean, we're seeing like some rising issues in racing that weren't as prominent as they were before. The racing is, in a way, it's kind of gotten a little more brutal with guys beating on each other. But what are some of the things that you can tell these guys that, you know, that you could give advice to?
Well, the first thing you got to look at, why is racing so tough right now? Well, NASCAR has done a great job in making a level playing field. So all the cars, all the trucks, they're all the same now. Well, Cup, everybody's got the same race car, right? Because it's all store-bought pieces. Xfinity, everybody has the same body. Yeah, there's small things you can do, but you know, everybody's got the same stuff. All the parts and pieces are the same. Trucks, same thing. It's the same truck for the last 10, 12 years. Nothing's changed. The bodies have developed a little bit, but everybody has a good body. Everybody has the same motor. They all race on the same tires. All the parts and pieces are the same. So now you've got a whole field of trucks, a whole field of Xfinity, a whole field of Cup. Everybody's got the same vehicle. So they all go the same speed. So when everybody's going the same speed, it's hard to pass.
Yeah.
So now you see it's so hard to pass. You see all this blocking. If a guy gets a run on a guy, he gets blocked. Because if you don't block him, you're getting passed, and you're probably not going to pass him back. That's why it's gotten to this point. And in trucks, it's really bad because, again, like we talked earlier, the kids don't understand racing. They just rather wreck you. You know, and it's just brutal. And because they're all the same, all the fast trucks are the same speed, it's that much harder.
You know what really bothers me is that some of these kids need to be made to work on some of these trucks again, or just racing in general. Because I know that there are many times when I've been at the track, I've gotten cleaned out by a young kid, and I'm over here thrashing, putting the front end back together, you know, spending money on tires, rims, a spindle that got wrecked, tie rods, you know, and then they look over and they're tossing the football around, and the paid crew or the development team is putting it together. So when they hop back in that car, it's ready to go. You know, and then they'll just go out and do it again.
Yeah. You know, I've said
the problem, just
times.
interrupt you really quick, sorry. The problem is what it's doing at that level is it's driving the father-son teams away because they can't afford to do it anymore.
Very true. Very true. I think a lot of the mentality that these young kids have is two things. One, grow up racing, iRacing, you wreck, Control Alt Delete, you go again.
Yeah.
They don't. There's no consequence in it.
Yeah.
And when they get into Bandoleros or Legends cars or quarter midgets or go-karts, whatever it be, they're told when they're 6, 7, 8 years old, why did you finish second to that kid? Next time you hit him and you knock him out of the way. Yeah. You go on and win the race. So this is what their mentality is drilled into their heads from when they start as a kid. So that's what they think. And I always said, you know, I want to start a truck team someday. I was really close last year and it just didn't happen. But I've told several people, when I own a truck team, my driver is not getting paid to drive the truck. My driver is going to get paid to work in the shop. And because he works in the shop, he gets to drive the truck.
Okay.
And his schedule is going to be in the mornings, he works out, does his fitness routine, comes to work, he's at the shop by 11 o'clock, so he can go to lunch with his team, comes back from lunch, and he works on the trucks. He works on the shocks. He's putting bodies on. He's learning everything about that truck. He goes and does the bump steer. He sets it up on a setup plate. He's going to learn what it takes to make that truck go. And when he knocks a nose off or knocks the side off, he's going to be there and he's going to cut the side off. And he's going to be there and help the guy put the side back on.
Do you see
He's going to realize the consequence of his stupidity on the racetrack.
Are you seeing that with any drivers nowadays who are working on their stuff? No. I mean, I do hear like Carson Quapple's a really good example. Like, he goes in and works on the late models that he races, which I think is fantastic, which I think has helped him also not only as a driver, but I think to get that truck ride that he had got earlier this year. So who is like someone that you would look at to possibly put in your hypothetical team right now?
What I would like to have, and again, I was really close last year, but it didn't happen, is a 3-truck team. And I'd have a veteran that I know is going to go out and be competitive and get the job done. I would love to have a minority of some sort, you know, young kid, young girl that can drive, and I want to give somebody the chance, right? And then a young kid is a development, somebody that you think has the opportunity, has the skill set to do what it is, and you give them the opportunity. Like a Carson Quapple, you know. There's several of these kids out there that's just really good. Like a Jesse Love, he got his opportunity with RCR next year. Awesome. I mean, that kid's a good racer. You know, and there's a lot of kids like that.
It's a huge undertaking, though, to start your own team.
It is. Well, I was going to team with somebody.
Okay.
Yeah, an existing team.
Did you imagine yourself into that team owner role someday?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
but it has to be funded, and therein lies the catch, because it's hard to get funding to do this. Yeah, it really is.
You know, some of the young kids come up to me and they were like, you know, how do I get a ride in this car? How do I get a ride in that car? I'm like, stop looking for a ride and start looking for a sponsor, because once you have a sponsor, you can go to any car you want and hop in it. So the ones there are kids that are working at, like we had Ryan Vargas in on this show. Now, he doesn't work on the race cars, but he works Monday through Friday looking for the financial support for him to go race, which I think is honorable. I mean, if you don't know how to work on it, you're not mechanically inclined, fine. But he's bringing something to the table, and that is a big piece, which is, you know, the support that a team needs. Yeah. So what are some of those other things that you think a driver needs to work on nowadays? I mean, as far as like your social media, your sponsors, like talking with them or having a relationship with them, because it's something that I noticed over the years when I would report the modified races on one day and I'd report a K&N race the other day. Modified field to be filled with veterans, guys who won multiple championships, former rookies of the year, whatever it may be. Over here on the K&N/ARCA side, you had a lot of young kids that are in development deals that are just starting out and all of that. Now, one of the big things I noticed is these guys had the laps, they had the wisdom, they have the life experiences. So talking with them was easy. Here, I had to pull stuff out of the kids. You know, it's hard to get that information out of them. What do you think that they need to work on to be able to have those better relationships with sponsors, speaking, everything?
One of the things that I tell the young kids that I do help, ones that I'm friends with, is you need to go to Dale Carnegie School.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if he's even in existence anymore or if somebody's taking it over or what. But when I started out racing, okay, I was a mechanic, a crew chief, fabricator. I did all that. When I started driving, I wasn't that good at talking about things. I went to the bookstore. Back then, bookstore. Now you just go online and get it. Went to the bookstore and bought Dale Carnegie's book about learning for public speaking and how to do it and the things that make you better at it. And I read the book, and that's all I did. And it was a totally different world for me after that. All my interviews were better. I could speak to people better. Okay. Yeah.
So you never really did any media training or anything?
No.
No kidding.
No.
Oh, wow.
And in today's world, being a driver is half about being in front of the camera and being able to speak in public and be able to speak to a sponsor, go to a boardroom and talk to people. You got to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. So the number one thing I would tell the young kids, figure it out.
Really?
Whether you go to a class somewhere or you get a book on it or whatever you do, you have to learn how to do this. Some of these young men are already pretty good at it. Case in point, one of my favorite people in the world is a good kid. He's a friend of mine. Is Kaz Gralla. Mm-hmm. My Lord, I could sit there and listen to Kaz all day. When he does interviews on Sirius, it's like the guy's been doing this for 30 years.
Yeah, he's
just phenomenal.
He has a very outgoing personality. I remember from when I interviewed him back in the days when he was coming up through the ranks.
And then you got kids that, I won't mention names, but really can't hardly put a sentence together in front of a camera. And they're always looking down and talking to the guy like this, and you can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't. You have to be engaging. If you can't talk to the camera, at least talk to the guy that's interviewing you, right. And be engaging and outgoing. And that's really hard for some people to do that. It was hard for me. I grew up, as nature, I'm a shy person. Mm-hmm. I learned how to get through it and understand you can't be that way. Mm-hmm. There's still certain situations where I'm pretty shy about things.
I got you. I understand. We're getting close to the end of the show, but one of the things that I wanted to ask you and bring this up, I was always curious about it, and I watched it on TV a bunch of years ago when you won. I think it was Kansas or Kentucky. And
Kentucky.
Kyle Busch popped you out of the way, and you won the race later afterwards. And in victory lane, you said you wanted to thank Kyle for being a dirty driver to help you get to victory lane. What the cameras show him showing up in victory lane. What was the conversation? Tell us the whole story and what happened.
So,
because he got you off your fuel cycle or something, right?
Well, so we all pitted.
Okay.
And we came out, and I was faster than Kyle. We came out like fourth, past third, past second, and I run Kyle down. It's about 8 laps, and going into 3, I drive under him, and I pass him. I get just a little loose, so he kind of drives to the outside of me, and he knew what he was doing. No matter what he says, he knew what he was doing. He drove down on my door to get me loose, so I could take the air off. Well, I end up spinning out, spun down through the grass in the infield. Caution comes out. So we have to come in and pit because one of the bed tops came loose. So we had to tape it all down. Of course, we put tires on it. Now, this was the last run of the race, right? This is the end of the race. Fill it up with fuel. Take off. Here we go. Green. I'm like restarting 28th. Thing was a rocket ship. Drove all the way up. Got to 5th. With probably 12 or 15 laps to go. Now, I had 8 laps more fuel than everybody.
Right. They were all running out.
So
right.
they got to start pitting. Caution hadn't come out. They all start pitting. Then one pits, Kyle pits, they all start pitting. So now we're leading the race with like 5 laps to go, 6 laps to go. Junior comes. Now, the next truck behind me is 25 seconds, right? Junior says, I need you to start saving fuel just to be safe. I think we're okay, but just to be safe. So I literally rode around the racetrack in Kentucky at half throttle. All the way around it for 5 laps. We had plenty of fuel. We had like 2 gallons left. So we win. Go to victory lane. I get out. I said, that was a great run. But right off the bat, first thing I got to do is I got to thank Kyle Busch for driving me dirty, sucking me around so I could come in and get fuel and make it to the end of the race. Oh. So the interview had just got over. It was only over like 2 minutes. And here he come, flying in the victory lane. He was in his trailer, saw my interview on the TV. That's how mad he was. He lost. He was already in the trailer changing clothes, right. And I'm just getting the victory lane. He saw the interview, come flying in the victory lane, and gets up. I didn't drive you. Quite a few expletives going back and forth. I didn't drive you dirty. You know I do. You, I know you did. You knew what you were doing. You're driving like that because you know I'm kicking your ass. Oh God, it was funny. Yeah,
I remember watching it on TV. I'm like, I can't hear what they're saying, but
they showed it all on TV.
I know.
Yeah.
You couldn't. If I was a lip reader, I could probably understand the whole conversation. But oh my God, I remember watching that. I was like, oh, look at Todd, man, talking smack. I was like, that was some cool shit.
Yeah, yeah.
So
me and Kyle had that love-hate friendly rivalry going on.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what did you have any rivalries with anyone else?
Not really.
Anyone get under your skin, or who did you play a lot of bumper tag with over the years?
Not really. Everybody. That was the thing about truck racing, especially truck racing. You could rub people. You could give them shots, and they could give you shots, and it was. Yeah, it was rubbings racing, but we never wrecked each other.
It wasn't to clean you out.
No.
Yeah.
No. And that's what made it fun. And the best part about those times, and you'd never see this today, you see it a little bit in that the guys get away from the track and they'll go to dinner together or something because their wives are friends. But we were all friends. We all hung out after the race, in our motorhomes, and we drink beer together, and we travel together sometimes, and we were all friends even after rubbing on the racetrack. We were also older. We'd been through our glory days of racing. We'd all raced Cup. Mm-hmm. We'd all raced Xfinity, and we came to the Truck Series to end our careers and have fun and enjoy what we did. So we did.
Yeah, and that's what it looked like a lot of you guys were doing too. Because Skinner was having a blast.
We did.
Day,
we had so much fun.
Dennis Setzer, who is just a legend in the short tracks and everything.
Yeah, we had a blast.
But here was the good part about it though too. What I saw was that those young kids that were still coming up through the ranks could come to you guys for your wisdom.
Yes.
And your advice and your guidance. Where a lot of it has been diluted because the drivers are younger and younger now.
Mm-hmm. You have no veterans anymore. Mm-hmm. Matt Crafton's 47. He's the oldest guy out there.
Right.
And then Grant and Ben. Grant's, I think, 33 or so, and Ben, I think, is 28. So that's our veterans. We were all in our 40s when we were doing that. And we came there to finish our careers. And this is the difference of today. Now today's truck drivers are coming there to start their careers and make a name. So they think they have to go out there and run balls to the wall every lap to make their name. Well, that's not how it's done. Look at Corey Heim and what he did this year. The kid was rock solid from day one. Didn't make mistakes. He had to sit out St. Louis, and after that, the kid was just phenomenal to watch every week. Mm-hmm. If he had a truck that was going to finish fifth, he finished fifth. If he had a truck to win, he was going to win. He didn't take more than it was going to give him. He had 15 top 10s in a row.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. One thing I say to all the kids, watch what he did. Learn from it.
Right. I gotcha. Really cool stuff. Your family, of course, having all the involvement in the modified racing for all those years. The last time you drove a modified was what, 2004? Was it New Hampshire? I think it was.
Yeah, one race in New Hampshire.
Any desire to get back in again?
I would love to. When Hermie started his team, he had called me and said, "Look, man, I got a couple of races open if you want to run." I was like, "Yeah, I'd like to do it." Well, it ended up the races that he had open, I couldn't do because of TV.
Oh, okay.
TV is my priority, and it's the way it's going to stay.
Right.
And
we had Mike Bliss on the show, and he even said, he goes, I want to try, I'd like to try a modified.
Modifieds are so much fun.
Mike Bliss, another good, truck driver.
They're so much fun.
So, all right, well, we've had Chris Williams on the show, who's been the director of the Smart Modified Tour. So, Chris, if you're listening, Todd Bodine, another possible candidate to put in a modified. So, keep that in mind, because Newman's running them. Mm-hmm. Hermie Hobson won. Bobby's won, what, three races, I think, this year?
Well, of course, I see Bobby at the studio all the time because he comes and do the hub, and he's having so much fun racing those cars.
Yeah, Andy Petrie had one for a little while too, and he was loving it.
Yeah.
That was the other thing Bobby said. He said that is probably the most freaking fun I've ever had.
It is
in a race car.
It is
very cool.
And it's as a driver, like a guy like Bobby. and Ryan too. It's a deal where you get to go out, you get to compete doing what you love to do with zero pressure.
Right. Okay.
It's all about going out and just doing the best you can with what you got and having fun.
Yeah.
There's no better racing than that.
It is. It's pretty cool when that you don't have to worry about points or money.
And I'll tell you, that Smart Tour is competitive. Man, we've gone to watch a couple of races. Mm-hmm. Joey Coulter is a good friend of ours, Joey and Jess. And we went to watch him a couple times, and that's a competitive series.
It is. And I talked to guys like Burt Myers and who's run the modified tour compared to Smart, and I said, how competitive is this compared to the? He goes, it is right on par.
Yeah,
the technology, the cars.
It's it. Everybody's got good cars now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, man, definitely want to thank you for coming in, and we definitely got to put that modified thing together.
Love to do it.
Either that or show up at Mountain Creek or Millbridge one night for the dirt races. Your nephew's
I never raced dirt. I would love to do it, but I got to get out and practice, and
it's fun, man. I went from pavement to dirt. You got to give it a try, man. Just to go play, just to try it. But definitely, thank you for coming in. We definitely appreciate you.
I love it, man. Appreciate it.
That was awesome. Todd Bodine joins us on the Derek Pernesiglio Show. We want to thank him for coming in, and remember to follow us on YouTube at the Derek Pernesiglio. Hit that like and subscribe button. Same name to follow on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Keep up with us at Real DP Show. So for Todd Bodine, I'm Derek Pernesiglio saying we'll see you the next time. Bye.